The leather gloves hung midair, suspended in a moment that would be whispered about in boxing gyms for the next 50 years. October 1974. Deep in the sweltering heat of Deer Lake, Pennsylvania, Muhammad Ali's training camp, where the rhythmic thunder of fists against heavy bags had fallen suddenly, impossibly silent. The most famous athlete on earth had frozen mid-combination, his right hand trembling 6 inches from his sparring partner's jaw, and what he said next would reduce Angelo Dundee, the man who had cornered him through 60 professional fights, to tears in front of a dozen witnesses. 3 weeks before the rumble in the jungle, 3 weeks before Ali would face George Foreman in Kinshasa, Zaire, in what bookmakers were calling a suicide mission, the 32-year-old former champion, stripped of his title 7 years earlier for refusing induction into the army, had clawed his way back to this moment, a shot at reclaiming what had been stolen. But the odds were impossible. Foreman was 25, undefeated in 40 fights, 37 by knockout. He demolished Joe Frazier in 2 rounds, the same Frazier who'd beaten Ali. The press called Foreman a wrecking machine. They called Ali washed up, desperate, delusional. The training camp reflected that desperation. Deer Lake sat isolated in the Pocono Mountains. 19 hand-built log cabins scattered across 18 acres of pine forest. Ali had constructed it himself in 1972, naming each cabin after a fighter he admired, Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson. The main gym smelled of sweat, leather, and the faint metallic tang of blood that never quite scrubbed out of canvas. By October, the camp had become a pressure cooker. Sparring partners rotated through daily, each instructed to mimic Foreman's murderous style, straight ahead, relentless power, no mercy. Larry Holmes was there that afternoon. So was Jimmy Ellis, Ali's childhood friend and former heavyweight champion. Bundini Brown, Ali's spiritual cornerman, leaned against the ring post, his usually animated face drawing with worry. They'd all seen the beating Ali had absorbed that week. The Foreman style wasn't elegant. It was annihilation. The sparring partners had orders. Come forward, throw bombs, don't stop. Ali had to learn to survive what was coming. But Eddie Brooks was different. 23 years old, a light heavyweight from Philadelphia with quick hands and a rebuilding career after a rough patch. He'd been brought in not to punish Ali, but to provide speed work, tune-up rounds to keep the champion sharp between the heavy sessions. Brooks needed the money desperately. His father had died 8 months earlier, a factory accident in South Philly, a conveyor belt malfunction that crushed his spine. Eddie had been supporting his mother and the 2 younger sisters since January, picking up sparring gigs wherever he could find them. The Deer Lake job paid $200 for 3 days' work. It was a lifeline. Dundee had paired them for the 4th round of the afternoon session, specifically requesting someone lighter, faster. Ali needed to work on footwork, not absorb more punishment. The round had started typically enough. Ali circling, feinting, that familiar shuffle step that crowds adored. Brooks, respectful but focused, jabbed at Ali's guard, probed for openings. 30 seconds in, Bundini shouted, encouragement from the corner. Float, champ, make him miss. The heavy bag in the corner swayed slightly from the building's old ventilation system. Sunlight slanted through the high windows, catching the dust motes suspended in the air. Then Ali asked a question, not the usual ring chatter, the psychological warfare he was famous for. Something else entirely. He slipped Brooks's jab, closed the distance, and spoke quietly, his voice barely audible over the creak of the ring ropes. Your father, how'd he pass? Brooks froze. His gloves dropped half an inch. Ali didn't press the opening. He just waited, hands still up, but the attack posture gone. Brooks blinked sweat from his eyes, confused. How did you... He'd never mentioned his father to anyone at the camp. Ali tilted his head slightly, a gesture of patience. Bundini told me yesterday, said you've been carrying a weight that ain't got nothing to do with boxing. The other sparring partners, lounging on the ring apron between rounds, leaned forward. Dundee, holding the stopwatch, forgot to call time. The gym held its breath. Eddie Brooks's voice cracked. Factory accident. January 14th, his Philadelphia accent thickened with emotion. Conveyor belt. He was trying to clear a jam and somebody hit the restart button. He was 51. Ali lowered his gloves completely, a cardinal sin in sparring. He stepped closer, close enough that the ref would normally break them. You the oldest? Brooks nodded. Got two sisters, 12 and 15. My mom, she's not doing good. I'm trying to hold it together, but I can't find steady work. And the bills, Ali interrupted gently, the same tone he used with children who approached him in airports. You've been carrying him into this ring every day. It wasn't a question. Brooks's jaw tightened, fighting the tears pooling in his eyes. The younger fighters on the apron exchanged glances. This wasn't training. This was something else, something raw and uncomfortably intimate for a boxing gym. Ollie continued, his voice soft but firm. I can see it, man. You're not fighting me. You're fighting to prove something to a man who ain't here to see it. Every punch you throw got his name on it. Every time you get up early to run, you're trying to make him proud. But he already was proud. You know that, right? Brooks shook his head, the tears spilling now despite his clenched jaw. He thought boxing was stupid, said I was wasting my life. We fought about it the week before he died. Last conversation we had, I told him he didn't. He understand nothing about my dreams. He told me I was being selfish. The words tumbled out. Months of suppressed grief weaponized into confession. I ain't talked to my sisters about it. I ain't talked to nobody. I just keep fighting and training and pretending I got it under control. But I don't. I can't sleep. I can't eat right. I'm terrified I'm going to fail them, that I'm going to prove my old man right. That I am selfish, that boxing was a stupid dream. The silence in the gym was absolute. Even the heavy bag had stopped swaying. Angelo Dundee's stopwatch dangled forgotten in his hand, his weathered face stricken. Jimmy Ellis had stood up from his stool, his own eyes damp. This kind of vulnerability didn't exist in boxing gyms. Men bled here, broke bones here, but they didn't break open like this. Ali removed his right glove. The Velcro ripped loud in the quiet. He reached through the ropes. I grabbed a towel from Bundini's unresisting hands and gently wiped the sweat and tears from Brooks's face. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected, that Larry Holmes later said it was like watching a father with a son. Ali's voice, when he spoke again, carried the weight of his own losses, his own battles, with institutions that didn't understand him. Your daddy was scared, Eddie, not disappointed, scared, because boxing is dangerous, and you're his boy, and every father's worst nightmare is watching his child choose a path that could hurt him. He didn't think you were selfish. He thought he was losing you. Brooks's knees buckled slightly. Ali caught him, their gloves thudding together in an awkward embrace. To the ropes, the champion continued, each word deliberate. But you ain't lost. In this dream, it ain't stupid. It's how you're feeding your family. It's how you're honoring him, even if he couldn't see it that way before he passed. Every morning you get up and run. That's love. Every time you step in this ring scared, but you do it anyway. That's courage. Your father didn't raise a quitter. He raised a man who fights through grief to take care of his people. That ain't selfish, brother. That's holy. The younger man's shoulders shook with silent sobs. Ali held him there, oblivious to the bell Dundee had finally remembered to ring, oblivious to the other fighters who had turned away to hide their own reactions. After a long moment, Ali whispered something that only Brooks heard, something that, decades later, Brooks would refuse to share publicly, saying only that it was a promise between us and God. When they finally separated, Ali cupped Brooks's face in his ungloved hand. "We're gonna finish this round, but you ain't fighting me no more. You're fighting for you, not to prove nothing to nobody, dead or alive. Just for you, to see if you can be present in your own life for 30 seconds. Can you do that?" Brooks nodded, speechless. They touched gloves again, and for the remaining 90 seconds of the round, they moved together in a dance that had nothing to do with violence. Ali covered up, let Brooks work, offered gentle corrections between exchanges. There you go. Feel that? That's you, not your fear. That's your skill, not your grief. When the bell rang, Dundee climbed through the ropes. A rarity, the trainer almost never entered the ring during sparring, and wrapped both fighters in his arms. Tears streaked his 60-year-old face unashamedly. He'd been in boxing since 1948, cornered 15 world champions, seen everything the sport could throw at a man. But this was different. This was Ali using the ring as a confessional, turning a sparring session into a ministry. Bundini, never at a loss for words, could only manage a choked, "Sweet Jesus, champ." The other fighters approached slowly, hesitantly, each offering Brooks a hand, a shoulder clasp, a quiet word. The unspoken code of boxing, the isolation, the emotional armor, had been shattered by Ali's refusal to let another man suffer alone. Jimmy Ellis, who'd known Ali since they were 12-year-old amateurs in Louisville, would later tell reporters, "I saw Muhammad stop fights because of cuts, because of mismatches, because something wasn't right. But I never saw him stop a fight because he recognized someone's soul was bleeding." That day, he was more than a boxer, he was a healer. The camp wrapped up 2 days later. Ali gave Brooks $500 in cash, more than double the agreed pay. And his personal phone number. "You call me when it gets dark," he said simply. "Don't matter what time you call." Brooks fought professionally for another 3 years, never became a champion, retired with a 19-A record. But in 1978, he opened a boxing gym in West Philadelphia specifically for kids who lost parents, funded partially by a anonymous donor. Everyone knew was Ali. By 2016, the year Ali died, Brooks's gym had served over 2,000 children. Angelo Dundee spoke about that October afternoon in nearly every interview for the rest of his life. When asked what made Ali great, Dundee always returned to Deer Lake, 1974, the moment his fighter became something more than a fighter. "People remember the rope-a-dope, the shuffle, the poetry," Dundee told HBO. In 2010, "I remember the day he stopped pretending combat was the answer and started showing us what strength really looked like. He was about to walk into the biggest fight of his life, facing a man who could kill him, and he stopped mid-swing to save someone else. That's not boxing. That's transcendence." Eddie Brooks attended Ali's funeral in Louisville in June 2016, sitting quietly near the back. When interviewed by a local news crew, he was asked what Ali had whispered to him in the ring that day. Brooks smiled, shook his head. "That's between him, me, and the God he told me was watching us both. But I'll say this, it saved my life and the lives of 2,000 kids who walked through my gym doors, because Muhammad Ali taught me that your greatest power ain't in your fists, it's in seeing someone else's pain and refusing to let them face it alone." The lesson extends beyond one sparring session, beyond one man's grief. In a world that worships strength as dominance, Ali's legacy whispers something more dangerous, that true strength is vulnerability weaponized for healing, that the bravest thing a warrior can do is lay down his gloves mid-fight and ask, "What are you really battling?" That fame, talent, and power mean nothing if you can't recognize when someone else is drowning in plain sight. 50 years later, boxing gyms still echo with the sound of fists against bags. Fighters still chase greatness through pain and discipline. But somewhere in Deer Lake's memory, in the stories old trainers tell young fighters, in the thousands of children who learned to box in Eddie Brooks's West Philadelphia gym, a different sound persists, the sound of a champion's glove stopping mid-swing, and a voice asking, not "Can I hurt you?" but "How can I help you heal?" That is the fight that matters. That is the victory that lasts.